one of the reasons that we grow our mushrooms the way we do is we're growing them on organic brown rice. And it's, for those people who say, oh, brown rice, arsenic. No, it's non-detectable. So don't worry about the arsenic content of brown rice. It's non-detectable. We're growing those mushroom species here. As they digest the rice that we're growing it on, that rice becomes now a prebiotic. It's actually feeding the entire microbiome, not just the spore-forming bacteria that we've got. So the whole product is a prebiotic as well as a probiotic, as well as a postbiotic, because the mushrooms are also having that postbiotic activity as well.
Welcome to Vitality Radio, the podcast that helps you make sense of natural supplements and thrive without pharma drugs. I'm Jared St. Clair. I grew up in a health food store and spent over 40 years now figuring out what works and what doesn't, so that you can make confident, informed decisions about nutrition, supplements, and your health. Hello and welcome to Vitality Radio, the podcast that helps you master natural supplements, enhance your emotional vitality, and thrive without the use of pharma drugs. I am really excited for today's show for a couple of reasons. The topic is always interesting. We're going to talk about medicinal mushrooms and some very specific combinations that have been used for some excellent results by a company that most people listening to this show probably at least have heard of, Host Defense, the biggest name in mushrooms, started by the guy with the biggest name in mushrooms, Paul Stamets. Yeah. But I'm really excited because I get to interview someone who I've known about for years, who I've seen at I don't even know how many dozens and dozens of trade shows over the years. He's been doing this for 40 plus years, as have I. And really excited to have Tom Dadant on the show from Host Defense. Tom, welcome to Vitality Radio.
Thank you so much, Jared. Really, it's like finally, right?
Well, I've only done like 1,700 of these episodes. So, it's good to finally have you on one. So
there we go.
Happy to have you here. Let's talk. So you've been with Host Defense for close to a decade, I think. Is that what you said?
Well, yeah, close to a decade. It's like into my 9th year now.
Okay. All right. And so you're pretty well steeped in it. Prior to that, you were with Planetary Herbals, one of my favorite herb companies that we've had at our store, Vitality, for, I don't know, 30 years probably now. Yeah. And of course, we've had Host Defense forever as well. So you've been around the block with herbs and mushrooms quite a bit. I'm curious with what's happened with Host Defense, and I don't know what the timeline is exactly, but what we're going to talk about today, the first thing I want to talk about is kind of probably the most well-known product that Host Defense makes, the Stamets 7. We'll talk about that. But then we're going to talk about some products that are not just mushrooms, but also have some herbs or in one case, probiotics. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on herbs and mushrooms generally, because to me, they pair so beautifully, but they work so differently that there's this amazing synergy that can happen.
Exactly. And, and that's still, to go back to Stamets 7, which we'll cover again, but when we had an independent research firm in Japan call us and say, we'd like to look at that formula. We're not used to putting that many mushrooms together in one place. Mm-hmm. We love mushrooms. When they checked it out, they found out that there was a synergy using those 7 mushrooms at the same time together that was greater, almost 4 times greater than when you used each one of the individual mushrooms at a different time during the same day. Same amount, same everything. But when you put them together, the old saying, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
That's what we got. So
interesting. I wasn't aware of that. That's cool.
So basically with mushrooms and herbs, they've been used together, since probably before any kind of written history, literally. And one of the things with Host Defense that we did, back, I think it was almost about when I joined, back about 2017, 2016 or 15, we did what we called our mycobotanicals line. That was a subline for Host Defense. For originally, we were just mushrooms. And, so single mushrooms, 2 mushrooms, 3 mushrooms, 7 mushrooms, all 17 mushrooms. But we realized back then, they still had that, I don't want to eat a mushroom because I don't want to die or I don't want to get high. So I'm going to stay away from mushrooms.
Right.
And basically we decided, look, we've been educating people as an industry on herbs for decades now. Let's put some herbs together with the mushrooms that they're going to recognize the herbs, and maybe they'll make the leap of thinking, okay, if that herb's good for this, like let's take ginkgo for instance. We started what we call the mycobotanical line. That was herbs and mushrooms. And Brain is our best-selling mycobotanical, product. And there's ginkgo in there. And when people see the ginkgo, they were making the jump to saying, okay, lion's mane. Ooh, that's probably good for the brain. Oh, because this was
Okay.
back before that was all known. So we segued quite a ways, but you can see in the products we're going to talk about, there are herbs and mushrooms that work hand in hand really wonderfully.
Because, like you said, in many cases, I mean, we've come a long way with mushroom education, right? I think almost everybody knows what lion's mane is at the very least now. But
Exactly.
that wasn't the case 10 years ago or even less than that. That leap from ginkgo to lion's mane makes a lot of sense to me. That's that very interesting. So then let's talk about the Stamets 7 really quickly because I have always found it very interesting the combination of the 7 mushrooms that are in there because if you're going to talk about kind of the greatest hits of medicinal mushrooms, you're always going to have
Right.
lion's mane, you're going to have cordyceps, you're going to have reishi, maitake, but not maybe royal sun blase or blase. I'm not
Lazy,
even
yeah,
sure how
yeah,
you
right.
say that. Or Missima. So, talk about why Paul decided to throw a couple of sort of outsiders in the mix, I guess.
Right, besides just being the way he is, each one of the mushrooms that's in Stamets 7 supports a different organ system in the body, which makes it fascinating. Because on the label, it says daily immune support. Okay, now, and that compared to our My Community, which is all 17 of the mushrooms we cultivate, which says comprehensive immune support. So it can get a
Hmm.
little confusing. But Stamets 7 was meant to be the daily multi-mushroom formula so that you're getting all of these 7 mushrooms, each one of them supporting a different organ system in the body. And so let's take a nut mushroom like Messima. Besides being really great as an immune, supporting mushroom, it actually has a real good support for bone density. It helps the body to balance osteoclasts and osteoblasts, which is how your bones are repairing themselves. So at the end of the day, you're getting even a healthier bone structure.
Very interesting. I love that. And that I've always called it the multi mushroom, like the multivitamin of
Yeah, and
mushrooms,
you're
right?
exactly right. Yeah,
Yeah, and so that makes sense, but that I didn't know that about Messima. That's very interesting. And then also, well, let's do this really quick for people that are a little less well versed in mushrooms. The thing that I think confuses a lot of people is that maybe the most universally known aspect of mushroom health is immune support, right? You said the 7
absolutely.
product
Yeah,
is
and
immune,
and,
the
we
17
we
is
use the word
immune.
modulation with
Right.
which is balancing, and that's really what they're doing more than anything is they have the ability to balance immune function that, support that balance as opposed to pushing it.
Right. And so, but then if someone is looking for I mean, regardless of which mushroom you're getting, this is how I explain it to people. Tell me if I'm doing it right. Regardless of which mushroom you're getting, let's just say it's lion's mane because that's the king of all mushrooms, right? King of the
That would
jungle
be a
and the
s
king of
would be a
mushrooms.
smart mushroom to pick.
Yeah, exactly. So lion's mane, everybody's taking it for their brain, for prevention of, issues like dementia and things like that, for just general cognitive
Absolutely.
function, all the things that lion's mane does. But you're still getting this really cool side benefit of 2 things that I always talk about with mushrooms. One is you're getting this amazing prebiotic fiber that comes in the mushroom itself. And then you're also getting immune support regardless of the mushroom. Now, some are better for immune than others, but lion's mane still supports immune modulation. Am I accurate on that?
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that we know is that lion's mane supports the barrier tissue of the intestinal tract, and so we always talk about the gut-brain connection.
Mhm.
Lion's mane has a very, not only with the nerve regenerative aspect of the mushroom itself, but with the fact that it's protecting the barrier system of the intestinal tract so that we're getting proper gut-brain connection and communication, which makes it really interesting because, that's giving you a protection of the place where you've got 70% of your immune system resides in your intestinal tract. You definitely want that to be healthy. And like you pointed out, not only do you have the fiber in the mushroom mycelium itself, which, people will say, oh, with mycelium, there's hardly anything there, but it's all bioactive. It's all immune active. It's all biologically active within the body. And when it permeates the brown rice that we grow it on, we get secondary metabolites, fermentation metabolites, which is how the mushroom is digesting the rice by fermenting it. And
Mhm.
fermented foods have always been used by humanity for thousands of years.
Right.
So,
For
yeah,
all time, everything we're having to do with health, but especially gut health, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and of course, we know now that there's a term leaky gut that people didn't know what the heck that was 10 years ago either. And now we talk about it all the time as being, kind of this rampant issue that we deal with in American society because of processed foods and antibiotics and all the other
Dietary
things. So,
imbalances and so on. Yeah.
yeah, so if we can work on that aspect of it, then obviously we're doing some good. So then Stamets 7 basically in a nutshell is it's a multi-mushroom that works better together than any of the individual
Yes.
mushrooms by about 4 times, you're saying?
That's what the research showed, is that by combining these mushrooms, they actually have a synergistic effect. That team, if you will, we'll call it a mushroom team. That
Mhm.
team is excellent at enhancing and supporting proper immune function as well as supporting different organ systems in the body. Because you get, it's like you've got a basketball team or football team. Everybody's got their specialty.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think that's great. And I also think it's a good place for people that are kind of dipping their toes into mushrooms and say, well, where should I start? With this, you get this nice broad range of benefit. You're still getting the lion's mane that everybody's talking about, and you're
Yeah.
getting it in a more synergistic way, but you're also getting these other great mushrooms. So now, and the Stamets 7 for people listening comes in a powder form if you're interested in that. It also comes in capsules. It's a fantastic product and consistently one of the ones that just always moves off the shelf. People love the product once they try
Yeah,
it.
the people
Now
that
you
I've recommended it to, Jared, they basically they come back and they keep using it.
Yes,
That's
yeah,
and,
and we see that
yeah.
a lot with that formula for sure. Now, a few years ago, and you'll be able to tell me probably when, but you introduced this series of powders that are combinations like we talked about where they've got herbs and they've got mushrooms. One of them, the microbiome formula, also has spore probiotics, which I'm a huge fan of. I got really excited about these because of exactly what we talked about initially. Herbs and mushrooms are not the same thing. They're not reacting the same way inside the body, but they have this beautiful synergy when combined correctly. It's a toss up for me. I really struggle with this one. Which one of these is my favorite? I think it's the brain and body, but microbiome's really, really close. Let's start with brain and body if we can, because I love this product for a variety of reasons. One of the things I like about it is that it's kind of this golden milk thing,
Oh,
far
yeah.
as how it mixes up and how it tastes. It's a really pleasant one to use, and it's just loaded with good stuff. Talk to us about this formula.
Okay, so, we'll start off with the mushrooms. Obviously, this is part of what we call our mycobotanical line, which is a combination of herbs and mushrooms together. The herbs that we picked are for a specific purpose. They have an actual activity within the body as far as
Mhm.
supporting organ systems and so on. And then basically we understand that they also support mobility. That's why we call it brain and body. We've got lion's mane as one of the mushrooms. We've got reishi as another one of the mushrooms. Both of them are not only supporting optimal neurological function within the brain, memory, things like that, but they also support whole body health and wellness. Now, reishi, especially because it's an adaptogenic mushroom, is helping the body to balance cortisol levels in a normal range, which is really, really what you want if you've got, joint issues, if you've got mobility issues. When we first introduced this, we introduced it at Expo West, the biggest trade show in the industry. It's in a huge, building for people who've never been there, and it's all
Yeah.
concrete floors. You walk for 3 days on concrete floors. By the time you're done, your knees, your ankles, everything is hurting.
Yep.
And we were passing out free samples of this, as a liquid because it's like you mentioned, it's like a golden milk. If you're a chai fanatic, if you like chai, you'll like this because it's got a very recognizable flavor.
Yep.
And people
Yep.
kept coming back going, I don't know what it is, but I feel so much better. My knees don't hurt, my hips don't hurt. Give me some more of that stuff.
Yeah, it's a really great idea because golden milk has a tradition of use that goes thousands of years back,
Yeah.
obviously, and I love that. We've got the turmeric in there, we got the ginger, the cinnamon, little
And a
black pepper
little bit of
extract.
black pepper, and that's whole black pepper. That's not the BioPerine. That's like the whole full spectrum black pepper.
Gotcha. And then, two of the most powerhouse herb or mushrooms you can get, lion's mane and reishi as well. So this formula, one of the things that I love about this and why I call it one of my favorites is it does have that full 1,500 milligrams of lion's mane in there, which is
Yes, it
what you
does.
would get if you were just taking lion's mane on its own. But then you get all the added goodness. And this is one of the reasons why these powders make sense because, this is probably what, a 6 or 7 capsule formula if
Yeah.
it was in capsules, but it's
Yeah.
just a single scoop. that you get to throw into, the milk of your choice, your water, or your smoothie, or kind of wherever you want to put it. And I'm telling you, it's really good in coconut milk.
Oh
I
yeah,
really, really like it that way.
yeah.
So, very cool formula for both brain and body. And of course, also gut and immune because they're all gut and immune. So, I love this one. Let's talk about the microbiome one because, again, that's the other one that's sort of a toss up for me. This formula, we talked about, leaky gut being such a big issue. So, on the microbiome formula, we talked about leaky gut being a big issue. We hear a lot about, everything from SIBO to IBS and all the other issues that people are having with their gut health nowadays. It's a big problem. And of course, we always talk about probiotics when it comes to gut health. That's kind
Yeah.
of, the number one thing that people talk about: probiotics, prebiotics. Now, postbiotics are getting a lot of publicity. And this does have my three favorite probiotics in it: Bacillus coagulans, Subtilis, and Clausii. So I love that aspect. But probiotics can't do the whole job, right? We need more support in the gut. So talk to us about the herbs that are in this and why they're in there.
Okay, so basically, we've got two from a Western point of view, because as you know, I've been an herbalist for 45 years. So just to
Right.
make it really simple, from a Western point of view, both of these herbs are what are called demulcent. So demulcent is, think of them as making things slipperier, making things
Mhm.
more moist. And a lot of times the problem they have is they're constipated because they don't drink enough water. They don't get enough fluid in their diet. They don't get enough fiber in their diet that's going to create that smooth move that you want as far as elimination is concerned. And
Right.
when you put burdock root and you put marshmallow root, both of those are really insanely good demulcents. They're helping the intestinal tract, the lining, because it's a mucosal lining. You want it to stay lubricated. They help that, and at the same time, the burdock root is known to be able to help the liver with the liver's functionality. Then that's all about working on our digestion and our throughput, the creation of bile, and so on. So those two herbs work hand in hand with the mushrooms and with the probiotics. Now, like you said, you want prebiotic. One of the reasons that we grow our mushrooms the way we do is we're growing them on organic brown rice. And it's, for those people who say, oh, brown rice, arsenic. No, it's non-detectable. So don't worry about the arsenic content of brown rice. It's non-detectable. We're growing those mushroom species there. As they digest the rice that we're growing it on, that rice becomes now a prebiotic. It's actually feeding the entire microbiome, not just the spore forming bacteria that we've got. So the whole product is a prebiotic as well as a probiotic as well as a postbiotic, because the mushrooms are also having that postbiotic activity as well.
Yeah, it's a simple formula. There's not a bunch of ingredients in there, but it's a really well thought out formula. When I first saw it, I was so excited. The first question for me when Denise, who's my local rep that brings these products in to show me, she came in and she's showing me these, and the first question I had in my head was, okay, what do they have in here for probiotics? And I saw the three spores that are my three superhero spores, and I thought, okay, this is great. And then I love that the marshmallow and burdock are in there because you talk about herbalism, and traditionally, there aren't a lot of herbs that have a whole lot more traditional use than these two herbs. These are great,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
they're not that used nowadays, right? We hear about ashwagandha and turmeric and so many of these herbs now that have taken precedent over some of the more, I don't know, old school herbs in European medicine and that kind of thing. I love marshmallow and burdock, especially for people that are dealing with, more chronic just upset in the stomach. They're so
Yeah.
soothing and
Yeah, they're
calming to the gut.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
the thing is that right now in our industry, we've got people, brain function is really important, energy is really important, stress is
right.
really important. What it does is it's like you throw the baby out with the bathwater. The gut is absolutely the key to making sure that all of that stays within balance.
Yeah,
And
it
if
always
you
starts
lose
there.
that balance, then you're struggling. And that's why I mean, look, when you look at the mushrooms, you've got turkey tail, lion's mane, and reishi. Awesome, awesome combination.
Yeah, it's a cool formula. I think both of these, like I say, they're one A and one B for me in your line. I love both products. I've used both products a lot. The brain and body is the one that I always go back to. I think probably to a large degree, just because, well, yeah, I am worried about my brain, and for good reason. Ask my wife. But also, in addition to that, I just love golden milk. So it's a really pleasant one to use, and I love that product. Now, the last one we're going to talk about is your mycobotanicals immune, which kind of brings us back a little bit to a multi mushroom thing, a little more than the other ones. I think we have
Uh-huh.
what, 5 mushrooms in this formula, if I'm counting right. And then you got a handful of herbs and some whole food Corolla cherry, which is going to give you great dose of vitamin C. Talk to us about the herbs that are in this formula, then we'll get into the mushrooms.
Well, the very fascinating thing about this formula is that with the formulators that we have in the company, they're all they've had wonderful herbal experience, so they're herbalists. They understand how things can combine and work effectively, and it's not like, well, okay, I'm a Western herbalist. I don't know anything about Chinese herbalism. I don't know anything about Ayurvedic herbalism. Three of the mushroom are not mushrooms, but herbs that are in this formula are astragalus, which is a major Chinese, adaptogenic, organ system protective, immune protective mushroom or herb. Then you've got a goji berry and schisandra berry. Now, goji berry and schisandra berry are two of the superior tonics in Chinese medicine. So when they talk about a tonic, they're talking about a rejuvenative. They're literally rejuvenating your body, and part of that rejuvenation is to make sure your immune system is up to standard where it needs to be.
Right.
So you've got
Yeah.
those. There are three major tonic Chinese herbs that are in the
Yeah.
formula.
Sorry, didn't mean
No,
to jump in there. Yeah, I love this one too, and it's an I actually this is the only one of the 3 I haven't actually personally tried, so I'm gonna have to take one home and give it a shot. But I'm curious because it is a powder. What's the flavor like on that one?
okay, so it has almost a smoky, sort of a citrusy flavor. So
Okay,
it blends really well with juice. I like it with
all
apple
right.
juice. It actually augments the flavor of apple juice and vice versa. Gives that a little bit more of a sweet aspect to it. But you notice the mushrooms in there are very, very different because they're not the mushrooms that we ordinarily would have, that people would be used to seeing in our line. You've got agarikon and turkey tail. Now, agarikon and turkey tail are two of the strongest mushrooms that we cultivate, right? That's the thing that makes this formula kind of unique.
Expound on a couple of things for me on this one. Agarikon is a mushroom that I think people need to know a lot more about. You say it's one of the strongest mushrooms. I think it's probably one of the less well-known
But
mushrooms.
yes,
We
it's
rarely have
easily.
people coming in asking for it. So talk to us about it briefly.
So agarikon was actually known thousands of years ago. Hippocrates wrote about it. Avicenna, who was a Persian physician, very, very famous at the time, they both use it. It used to be found all over the planet. It's an old growth mushroom. So as old growth forests have disappeared and all over the globe, it's gone, back to a point where it's very hard to find. Paul's mycology teacher told him it took me 40 years of looking before I found my first agarikon on a tree. Paul went out on his first, like he's, on a boat up a river looking and the first outing out, he spots one up in a tree. So it's kind of like his totem. It's like a mushroom that he loves. And
Yeah.
they always take a giant agarikon. They can live to be about 80 years old. They look like an
Wow.
upside down stack of pancakes coming off the tree, and they're very specific about what trees they want to grow on. So that dwindling forests, all of that other thing makes them really scarce. But they were highly revered by the Pacific Northwestern Native American tribes. They were shamanic mushrooms that were used to protect the shamanic hut, if you will. When the shaman passed away, if they put the agarikon mushrooms out by his gravesite to protect his gravesite. I mean, there's some really rich history with those mushrooms.
Very
Very
cool.
cool.
And then another one that I think doesn't get nearly enough love is chaga. And you've got chaga in there. Chaga is also in the Stamets 7. I love chaga. Talk to us about that one.
Okay, so the biggest misconception with chaga is that because chaga is a looks like a big chunk of coal that's growing out of the side
Right.
of a birch tree or a beech tree, alder like that, and it literally people for years thought, okay, that's the fruiting body of the mushroom because that's the way a lot of other hard body mushrooms come out of trees. It's their fruiting body, but the chaga that's coming out of the tree is actually mycelium that because it's a parasitic mushroom, so it's trying to get to the heartwood, trying to get to the center of the tree.
Mm,
Do that,
okay.
it's got to go through ring after ring after ring after ring. So during a very dry season, the rings are very tight and very dense. It's hard to get through. But the mushroom is growing at the same time. That mycelium has to go someplace, so it pops out of the bark. Now,
Huh.
now it's outside. it's exposed to solar radiation because it likes to grow way up in the northern realms. So what's it do? It creates melanin. What do we create when we're out exposed to the sun? We create melanin to protect our skin. Literally, this
Mhm.
mycelium is creating melanin to protect itself from the solar radiation as it's sitting outside the tree. They call it a conch, or sometimes like a piece of charcoal. It's what it looks like. And
Yeah.
that's the mushroom protecting itself. So it has an affinity, which is fascinating, for the epithelial cells of the body. Now, the epithelial cells that's that first layer underneath your skin that is
Mhm.
the inside of the body from the outside world. It's the same layer, single cell thick, which I think is fascinating, that lines your lungs, lines your digestive tract, and lines your skin, all protective. And they're like what they call barrier tissues. They're all the
Yeah.
same tissue. So chaga has an affinity for protecting and supporting those tissues in the body, which is why you'll find it in a lot of our formulas.
Yeah, I love chaga. Some of what you said, I either didn't know or didn't remember. That's fascinating, the parasitic nature of it. But what I have known about chaga and what fascinates me the most is that barrier protection. I recommend it a lot. Again, when we go back to gut health, big thing because of the issues that we're dealing with in America with leaky gut and all that kind of stuff. Chaga is just a really cool mushroom that I think needs
The
a
same,
lot more love.
yeah, and Jared, the same thing applies to respiratory. That's why we have it in our breathe formula, which is chaga and cordyceps and reishi, because it's protecting the lining, it's supporting the lining of the respiratory tract.
That's awesome, and that's good to know because I don't usually think of chaga there, so that's great. I often think of, cordyceps when we're talking about
Well, sure.
respiratory for other reasons, obviously, and of course, you and I think could probably talk about this for the rest of the week, but you are actually, on vacation right now yourself, and I need to wrap up because I gotta run and open a store. But, this has been a great conversation. I really am so happy to have had you on finally. It's been forever
Yeah.
that like I say, I've known you, I've met you multiple times at shows, but we've never actually had the chance to sit
Well,
down and talk.
after
So
40 years, it is about time.
it's about time. Yeah. I was actually listening to a YouTube video on the way in and the last thing he said was it's about time. And I thought, okay, well, that's fitting for what we're doing today. So
Exactly.
anyway, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the information. We have these three amazing combinations that are all under the mycobotanicals, the microbiome, the immune, the brain and body. Those will all be linked in the show description. Of course, the Stamets 7, the classic
That
formula
no,
has been
that
around
just,
forever.
as you said, Stamets 7 is my daily go-to. It's in my morning beverage. I put it in oatmeal. That's the
Yeah,
nice thing about the powders, Jared. Just a quick touch on that. They're the most economical way to buy our
yes,
mushrooms, and they are the easiest to use because you're not swallowing handfuls of capsules. You can put it in a smoothie. I put it on oatmeal. I put it on granola. I put it in pancake batter. It's already been heated. You're not going to hurt it.
right. I'm glad you
So,
brought that up.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, it's got to be the same for you. People that have been in this industry forever, we like to take supplements, right? We we have a cabinet that
And
looks
it goes with the territory.
a lot like my store. So the less pills I have to swallow, the better. So when I take mushrooms, it's always a tincture or a powder. I don't ever swallow mushroom capsules because I have to take other things in capsules. So
Yeah,
I
I got no
love the
more room
powder.
for capsules.
Exactly. All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time and your expertise. We'll have to do this again, talking
It's
on
an
some
honor.
other
It's an honor.
topics.
Anytime, anytime.
All right. Thank you so much. And for everybody listening, I hope this was another helpful mushroom episode for you. We've been bringing these to you from time to time to try and enhance your education on medicinal mushrooms because they are such a powerhouse that you definitely need in your arsenal. If you have questions, call us 801-292-6662 or visit one of our two stores with the Bountiful or South Ogden. We've got you there. And of course, on our website as well, vitalitynutrition.com. Until next time, my name's Jared St. Clair, and this has been Vitality Radio. Thanks for listening to the Vitality Radio podcast. If this episode helped you, follow the show, share it with someone, and explore trusted education and resources at vitalitynutrition.com. See you next time.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Vitality Radio. Just a reminder that this podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast has not been evaluated by the FDA. This podcast is provided with the understanding that the information shared is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This podcast is not a substitute for professional care by a medical professional. Thank you.